If you've ever had to build your own email templates when trying to send an email to a user of your application, you know that it can be quite tedious and actually difficult to really get right. But now with tools like React Email and Resend, we can actually build those emails directly into React itself and have more confidence in the experience that our users are going to have. So here I have a Next.js application running, but you do not need to use Next.js for this. The only reason why I'm using Next.js is because it makes it really easy to create API endpoints in the same project as your React code, which is going to streamline the entire tutorial video. But this will work with any React application and any backend, so don't worry about it. So first, let's start by creating some emails directly into this application with React Email. So what we're going to do is we're going to go here to our browser, and then we're going to go to react.email, and we're going to press here the docs at the top right. Here is the documentation of how you actually get started with React Email. We're going to go here to the Getting Started section, and here you have two main options to actually set this up. The first option is the automatic setup, which is basically going to set up a project from scratch and set up everything that you need. In our case, we're not going to be doing this because we already have our Next.js application that we want to integrate React Email into, which is probably going to be the most common use case. So in our case, we're going to go here to the manual setup. So the first step that you have to do to install this is to create a directory, which we're going to skip because we already have directories here inside of our project, so we don't need to do that. But the second step is we need to install the dependencies. So in my case, I'm using pnpm, so I'm going to copy this command over here. Copy this, go back here to my VSCode, open up the actual terminal, and paste this command. This is going to install React Email and then the React Email components library, which is going to allow us to have access to some components that we can use to build our emails. Then, once that is installed, we're going to go back here to the documentation, and here we're going to have to add a script to our package.json. We're going to have to add email dev over here. Now, they say to put it as dev here, but in our case, if I go and open up the package.json, we're going to see that because we are in Next.js, we already have a dev script over here that we cannot overwrite. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it under a different key. So I'm going to come back here, I'm going to copy all of this, come here and then put a comma and paste it. And this is going to be email like this. Instead of dev, we're just going to put email. Next, we're going to come back here and we're going to see that we have to create our first email template. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to copy this code, use this as a starting point, and then we're going to build from there. So I'm going to come back here to my project, open up the file explorer here. And what I want to do to keep things organized, I'm going to go here inside of the src folder, and I want to create a new folder that I'm going to call emails like so. This is going to be a folder where all of our emails are going to go so that we can have them easily organized inside of our application. And then I'm going to come here and create a new file, and we're going to do welcome.tsx like so. So this is going to be an actual TSX file for JSX, and we're going to have this be a React component that we can paste directly from the documentation over here. As you can see, this is a traditional React component. We have export default function email, and actually I'm going to rename this to welcome just so that we have it a little bit easier. And this is your typical JSX that you're actually using to render an actual email. Now, the cool thing about React Email is the fact that they actually provide you with some components that you can use to actually build your email. As you can see here, we're using the button component and the HTML component directly from React Email /components. We're wrapping everything in an HTML tag, and then we're putting this button here with this text, and then this href, and then this style property here. This is going to make it really easy for us to actually use those components to build our emails in any way that you want. All right, so that's one of the main benefits of using React Email is the fact that you get access to all of these components, and of course they can do everything inside of React itself, and this is very familiar. If you've ever worked with React, if you're a React developer, which if you're watching this video you probably are, then this should be no surprise to you. You should be able to get working with this right away without any extra steps or any extra complications. The next step for us to do is to actually preview this email, which we can do really easily with React Email. That's another one of its benefits. Traditionally, if you're building emails without React Email, what you would have to do to actually see this email and to actually preview how this is going to look, you would have to send this email to yourself in your own inbox and then open it either on your phone or on your computer and then see how it looks there. With React Email, however, we can actually spin up an app, which is this command over here that we put, and we can see a preview of our email directly in our browser as we're developing. So this is really useful. Now, before running this command, we actually have to do something because React Email by default expects your emails to be in the root of your entire project, which in our case, they are not. They are under src and then emails over here. So what we have to do is we have to tell this command where our emails are actually going to be. So we're going to come here and do --dir for directory, and we're going to do src/email like So then we're going to save, come here, open the terminal and do pnpm email. And this is going to run the actual application that we're going to be able to use to actually preview our emails. So as you can see, we have localhost 3000 here. We can just copy this link, go back here to our browser, open a new tab and paste it. And here in a moment, once this loads, we actually have our application, right? Welcome to React email. And then here in the sidebar, we have welcome. This is our actual welcome email that we created just earlier. As you can see, we have the button here. It has a background color of black, has a foreground color of white. And if you click it, it's going to take you to example.com, which if you remember is exactly what we had here. Inside of this welcome, we had a button with a black background color, a white foreground color, and it's sending you to example.com. This works exactly as you expect, and we're able to preview this email directly in the application from React Email. Right, so this is cool. This is really useful. We can come here, we can actually see it on a mobile screen. This is how it's going to look. And we can also see the actual code that we used for this. This is the code of our component coming directly from our React application. And you can also see the HTML that this generated, which honestly is a big mess. You have all of this code here, all of these weird styles. If you've ever had to build HTML emails yourself, you know that it's very tedious, it's a mess, and there are so many restrictions because the email environment is not the same as the browser environment. So not everything that works in a browser is going to work there. So the fact that we can do this in React and actually have it show up here as a preview, also without having to send it to our own inbox to preview, is really great. And that's why you want to use something like React Email to build your emails, especially obviously if you're using React. Now, there's two more things that I want to show you, and that's going to be in the actual documentation. The first one is all of the components that you have access to from React Email. So over here in the documentation, you have this component section. You have all of these components over here. But not just that, you have the components, you actually have an example of how to use them, but you also have a section here on the support, which is how different email clients actually support these components. Because the worst thing that you can have for yourself is if you design a beautiful email with some really cool functionality and you actually send it to your users and their email client doesn't support it, and then all of that work that you did, all of that cool functionality is never actually going to work and can lead to a horrible user experience for users when your intention was not to have that in the first place. So you have all of these components here. You have button, you have a heading, you have image, you have link, you have all of these, and then the support for every single client, which is going to make sure that what you build in your React application, the email that you actually see here, you can actually confidently expect that that experience is going to be the same for the users when they actually open the email in their actual email client. The second thing is, and this is also really useful, over here at the top of the documentation, you have an example section. And here, if you open this, this is the same application that we have running. And here you actually have examples of emails that you can use directly and plug into your application and use as a starting point. And these emails are emails from companies that you probably know, like Vercel over here, right? This is a template that you can access. You can go here and see the code for this. You can take this code, put it inside of your application and have the exact same email and then send that to your users. Obviously, please don't send this exact email, make it your own, put your own images and copy and text and whatnot, but you get the idea. You can directly use this as an inspiration and just send it to your users, right? You have one for GitHub, which is pretty typical. I'm sure that all of us have received an email like this from GitHub. We have different things. For example, we have Notion here, which is another popular application. You can look into these and see which ones fit for your own use case. Get the code, put it into your application, make it your own, and then directly send it to your users. This is really useful. Right, so if you're working in React and if you have a React application and you want to send transactional emails or any kind of emails to your users, use React Email, build your own email component, and then use these as inspiration if you want to. And then you're going to be able to have really beautiful emails that you can be confident that will look exactly how you expect. And then you're going to be able to send them to your users super easily as well, which is what I'm going to show you now. So now we have beautiful emails. We know how to create them. We know how to put them directly in our React application. The next step for us is to actually send them. If you go back here to the documentation, over here at the bottom, you actually have integrations and you have a list of all of the different integrations that you can integrate React Email with to actually send the emails to, right? So we have Resend, we have NodeMailer, we have SendGrid, Postmark. These are all very popular email providers that you can use to actually send emails with. In our case, we're going to be using Resend because it's the easiest to integrate, and actually React Email is built by the same people over at Resend, so they probably have the simplest and easiest integration to actually implement. So that's what we're going to do. So if we look here, send emails using Resend, what we have to do is install the dependencies. So we're going to have to install the Resend dependencies. Then we're going to have to create an email using React. We already did this. We have our welcome email. And then we're going to have to send an email. And the only thing to do that is we're going to have to use this Resend class. We're going to have to instantiate it with an API key, which I am going to show you how to do. And then we just have to await resend.emails and then send, and then put all of our information here. Who are we sending from? Who are we sending to? What's the subject? And then we can directly plug our component right under this React key. We can directly plug our email component, which is going to be this welcome component here, and send that directly. So the component that we have here is what actually we're going to send to our users and what our users are going to see when they open our email in their inbox. Right, so let's do this. Let's come back here. Let's go here to pnpm. Let's copy this, and then let's put all of this in our terminal. Let's close this and install Resend. One thing that I do want to mention is that this part over here, this sending the email, is going to get done inside of the server environment. So we're not going to be doing this inside of a React component. We're going to be doing this on the server, and that's why I'm using Next.js, because Next.js will have it super easy for us to actually create an API endpoint that we can call from a component and actually send this email there. But it's very important to note that this is going to happen on the server. So back to our Next.js application, we have Resend installed. Then what we're going to do, we're going to come here inside of the app directory. We're going to create a new folder. We're going to call this one API. And then inside of here, we're going to create a new folder and we're going to call this emails like so. And then here we're going to create a root.ts for our actual API endpoint. If this is unfamiliar to you, this is the standard way of creating an API endpoint in Next.js. You create an API folder, you then organize it however you want. I want this to be under /API/emails, and the root.ts file is the actual file that has the code, the function that will run your actual endpoints. So we're going to come here and we're going to do export async function post, and we're going to just declare an empty function for now. This is going to handle a post request, which is the method that we're going to use to send an email to our actual users. Then we're going to come back here to our actual documentation of React email, and we're going to take this part over here. So we're going to copy this, come here and paste it outside of the function. And then we're going to take this part over here and we're going to paste this inside of the function, because this is the actual code that is going to be sending the email. So first we're going to have to import Resend from Resend. So we're going to have to add this as an import. And then here, I'm just going to comment this out. The reason why we have errors over here is because we're using JSX notation here, but we are under a TS file, which we can't do. This is incompatible. So for us to actually get this to work, what we have to do is remove this, and we can actually import welcome from emails/welcome. And we can actually call it as a function like this, because as you know in React, hopefully you know this, any React component is an actual function, and you can actually call it directly as a function, which means that this is totally valid as a syntax. So now we have the basic building blocks to be able to send our actual email. We have a post endpoint here that is going to listen on /API/emails, which we can call from an actual component. This is then going to use the Resend here, which we've instantiated. Obviously, we're going to have to change this key over here because this is incorrect. This is probably invalid. And then using that, we're going to call the resend.emails.send, and we're going to pass from to subject and then our actual component over here. Now, of course, we're going to be changing these values to actual valid values, but this is enough to get us started. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to actually get an API key to be able to use Resend. Now, to get an API key, you have to make an account with Resend. So you're going to want to go to resend.com/signup. In my case, I already have an account, so I'm not going to make another account, but you want to create an account and then log in to get to the dashboard. I'm just going to press login here and log in with Google, because that is going to log me into my existing account. Once you've made an account, you should see a dashboard that looks just like this. Then you're going to want to come here to the left, go here to API keys, and here's where we're going to be able to create an actual API key to use with Resend. I already have one. I'm not going to use this one. I'm going to create a new one. So I'm going to come here and press create API key. I'm going to give this a name, tutorial. I'm going to give this as a permission, for example, sending access, because I just want to be a little bit more restrictive. And for domains, I'm just going to put all domains. In your case, you're probably also going to have this, but if you want to have it specifically set to a domain, you're going to have to configure your domains inside of Resend itself. So I'm going to come here and press add, and this is going to create an API key. Now this is important. Keep this in mind. You can only see this key once, right? So store it safely. I'm just going to copy this. Once you close this, you're never going to be able to see this key again. And if you lose it, you're going to have to create a new key and replace the old key with it, because the old key is gone. Then once we have our API key copied, I'm going to go back here to the application, and I'm not going to paste it directly here inside of here because this is going to be a security vulnerability. You don't want to place API keys inside of your code directly and commit that to your repository. Instead, I'm going to come here, and inside of the root folder here, I'm going to make a new file, .env.local. And here I'm going to put, I already have a file like this, and let me just delete this file and start over. I'm going to create a new file, do .env.local. And then here, we're going to do resend API key, and then we're going to paste our key over here. This is an environment file. If you're unfamiliar with this is actually the Next.js way of doing it. You do .env.local. This may differ depending on the framework that you're using, the environment that you're in, but essentially we're setting an environment variable. This is not going to be committed to our repository, and we can actually set this based on the different environment that we're in, if we're in development, different staging or production. And then we're going to be able to use this inside of our code through process.env and then resend API key and actually instantiate our resend instance. So we're going to come back here to root.ts, and we're going to do process.env.resend API key, and this is going to pull the API key that is available in our environment, and this way we're committing this to our repository, so we're not committing any sensitive information. And this API key, this environment variable, is going to be set somewhere else that is not part of our code, so this way we achieve security. Now once we have this set up, this is going to work exactly as we expect. This resend is going to use our actual account that we just created. So the next step for us to do is to actually configure these emails over here. So first, you want to get a from address. Now in our case, we actually don't have any domain set up. I do have one in my account, but you're not going to have one when you're starting out. So in that case, what I would recommend that you do is you actually go to the Resend docs, and then go here to introduction and find the documentation, and then perhaps go, let's say we're using Next.js, so let's find the Next.js, or let's just go for Next.js. And here you want to find where they're actually sending the email, and as you can see here, you have onboarding at resend.dev. So again, this is on the Resend documentation. You can actually use this email address as the from address in development to actually send emails so that you can test this out and make sure that it works exactly as you expect. Now it's very important, please do not use this email address in production because you are going to get your account suspended. You actually have to have a domain for this and actually connect it to Resend, and then put that domain, an address from that domain over here. But for testing purposes, it's perfectly fine to use this email address just to make sure that everything works exactly as you expect. Then we're going to want to configure a to address. So I'm just going to put here my Cosden Solutions address. So I'm going to do here contact@cosdensolutions.io. And as the subject, we're just going to put hello world, or actually let's do welcome and then exclamation mark because we are sending the welcome email. And here we don't have to do anything else. We're already using the welcome component that we created. And again, this one will have just a button that says click me. And this is what we should be able to see in our actual email. The last thing for us to do is to actually trigger this endpoint to actually send the email. So we're going to come here inside of our app, and we have one main component. Let me find it. We have the page component. This is our basic homepage component. This is where everything happens. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this a client component, use client, because we're going to want to use a button here with an on-click event handler, and this only works in client components. So we're going to remove all of this, and we're going to do button, send email. And here we're going to do on click, and this is going to be a function. And then here we're just going to do, actually this is going to be an asynchronous function. So async, and we're going to do here await, fetch, and then /API/emails. And then we're just going to pass here method and then post like so. So now we created a button. We have the button text to be sent email, and on click, we're just going to await a fetch of method post on /API/email, which is going to hit this endpoint here, /API/emails as a post method, and it's going to run this code and actually send our email to us, which is exactly what we expect. So now I'm going to open up here the actual terminal, and I'm going to do pnpm dev to run our dev server. Then I'm going to go back here to the browser, and I'm going to go to localhost 3000. And now we should see a button here that will say send email. If I can just zoom, and now if I press this, we should get an email in my inbox in just a few moments. And actually, I just realized that I do have a typo. It should be emails, not email. That's why this isn't working, because I wasn't receiving the email. So let's try this again. Let's press send email. And now in just a few moments, hopefully I should receive an email. And there you go. This is my Gmail, and we have an email from onboarding@resend.dev, and we have this click me button, which is exactly the email that we expect. This works exactly as we expect. We managed to send an email from our actual application to our inbox using React Email and Resend. This is great. So now that we have this working, I'm going to show you how to make these emails a little bit more personalized, because in reality, you're going to want to make these personal and not send the same exact email to every single one of your users. So first, what we want to do is configure this button to actually send the email that we want to send to and the first name of the user, because in a real scenario, you're going to have this data inside of a component. You're fetching the profile of a user, and then you want to actually send that data, send that email to the user using their email and probably their first name. Now to do that, it's actually quite simple, and that's because this is a normal post request. So the only thing that we have to do is just send some data along with this post request, access it in this endpoint over here, and then pass it to the actual function, right? So it's pretty simple. So we're going to come here to app, and besides method, we're going to come here, make a comma, and we're going to add body, and you're going to do json.stringify, and we're going to call this as a function and pass an object, and we're going to do email, and that's going to be contact@cosdensolutions.io, and then first name is going to be Darius, like so, right? So now we're passing this data as the body to our endpoint, and we're passing the email and the first name, which we can use. Then inside of our root, what we have to do to actually access that data is we have to pass it here a parameter. So in Next.js, every single root accesses a parameter. So we're going to do request over here. And this is going to have to be of type request, like so, to make TypeScript happy. And then to actually get the data, we can do const and then email first name equals await request.json, like so. So we're awaiting the JSON of this request, which if you can remember, we're sending this as JSON. So this is going to be valid JSON. And then we have access to the email and the first name. So what we can do is we can say to email, and then we can do, that's for the email. And then for the first name, we're going to want to pass it here to welcome. We're going to do first name, like so. Now we're going to have an error here because welcome is not meant to receive a first name, but we can easily change that because this is a normal React component. We can come here, we can define some props, type welcome props equals, and then first name, and then string, like so, and come over here. And then what is the error? What is the error? I don't know why we have an error over here. I don't know why that was there, but I just closed the file and I reopened it and it was fine. And then here, we're just going to do first name, and we're going to do welcome props, like so. And now we can actually use the first name inside of this component. So for example, we can do a heading, and we can import this from React email /components, and we can do welcome, comma, first name, and then we're passing the first name here, and then this button, we're still going to leave it just because we want to leave it. So now we have an actual component here. We have a button. On click, it's going to send this API request, this post request. It's going to send this data, the email that we want to send it to, the first name. This is going to get received here inside of this function using this request. And then we're just awaiting the JSON. We're getting the email and the first name. We're passing the email to the to parameter of Resend, and we're passing the first name to the component. And in the component, we're using it as the heading, and we're saying welcome first name, like so. So now if you go back to our application and go back here, where was it? The Next.js application. We can now press send email again, and we should have received now a personalized email in our inbox, exactly like we had before, but now just with the data of our actual first name. And there you go. We have our second email from onboarding@resend.dev. And now this is saying, welcome Darius, this is my name. And we now have a personal email that we can use to send to any of our users and make them feel like we're talking to them one-on-one, which ultimately is what you want, right? So now with this, we've successfully sent a personalized email with React Email and Resend, and everything works exactly as we expected. Good job. And as a bonus, because you're still here and you watched this far into the video, if you want to learn React by building a real world application, a real world project, check out Project React, because this is a course that I built that's going to teach you everything that you need to know to build a big and complex application with React. I've literally poured my heart and soul into this course. This course has all of the knowledge and hard lessons that I've accumulated over my 8 years with React, which is quite a long time to be honest. And I've put everything in a package that takes you from zero to hero and literally teaches you everything. There's so much content in here. There's so much things to learn. And the students that have taken this course so far are loving it. And it's completely and fundamentally changed how they view React and actually work with it professionally. So if you're interested, it's going to be the first link in the description. Once again, it's called Project React. I would love to see you on there. And trust me, if you take this course, you're never going to have to take another course on React ever again. This course is the best course that you can take for yourself, and there is no other like it. So once again, Project React, first link in the description. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos just like this one, make sure to leave this video a big thumbs up. You can also click here to subscribe, or you can click here to watch a different video of mine that YouTube seems to think that you're really going to enjoy. And with that being said, my name has been Darius Kozlan. This is Kozlan Solutions. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.